you're going to see a lower third. That's not my name. That's our guest's name. So we'll get to him in a second, but you already see who it is. So it's not like we have an element of surprise anymore. So here's a couple things I want to remind you guys about. If you are not following us on all major social media platforms, do us a favor. Do it right now. It's super easy. Go to @Grappling Hour on all major platforms. That's YouTube, Facebook, the other ones, Twitch, all that bullshit. Add us there, enjoy us, make sure that you follow us on a regular basis because we do dope shit. Sort of like right now in the background, I've got Submission Underground happening over here, and I'm watching Mike Perry get a little disseminated by one Raging Al. But that's not what we're here for today. We're here for an actual interview with a gentleman who, he makes kind of a noise in both the MMA worlds, the Jiu-Jitsu worlds, the wrestling worlds. He crosses off all of the I's and the T's on all of the things that make you a good fighter. I've been interested to talk to this dude for a number of reasons, the least of which is trying to argue with him about who should be on the pro wrestling Mount Rushmore. And I feel like this is the right time to air our grievances. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show for the very first time, Max Rohskopf. How you doing, sir?
Good, just sitting out here, hanging out outside in beautiful Las Vegas. About like 65 degrees.
This is 65 degrees for you right now?
Might be 70. I'm outside, so it can't be too cold because growing up in Ohio, I'm done with the cold. I ain't going back to that shit.
I listen, I'm so glad you made it out of Ohio. If they continue the Escape From franchise, I think the movie I'm going to make is Escape From Ohio because that drive of 8 hours and still being in Ohio is miserable.
Yes. No, Ohio, it breeds some tough people though, because you walk outside for 5 months out of the year and you're just like fuck, walking to your car.
Is that where the built-in toughness comes from? Do you attribute part of that? Because it's not just anybody who says, I'm going to be a wrestler. You know what? I'm going to fight too. Oh, and I'm going to do this jiu-jitsu thing pretty competitively with some savages. Where does that innate toughness come from, sir?
Yeah, it definitely just comes up from growing up where I grew up and the environment and being in Ohio. It's just there's a lot of people. Like right now I teach kids class in Las Vegas, and like sometimes the kids here being in the city, it might be other places in the city, but it's like I was climbing trees before I was able to like walk. Like I was always just out doing shit like that. And here it's kind of like I try to tell a kid to run and they don't know how to run. And they're 8, and I'm just like, But I just remember me and my buddies were always just like picking fights with each other, and then just being friendly about it after. Like that's just what we did. Whether it was like
each other, and I was the smart one, so my job was always to be the ref and like actually be there and be like the older cousin that's like, you idiots. And to them now, they're mega surprised that I'm the one that's the jiu-jitsu, and I'm the highest rank of all of us. So I'm always like, yeah, I know. You guys all did all that stuff, and you killed your bodies, and somehow I'm still okay. But it's so funny because the guy who officiated my little cousin's wedding yesterday, he's a jiu-jitsu black belt, and I'm like, damn it. You've been fighting. How many times have you been fighting with Titan, though?
This is my first time. This will be my Titan FC debut. I fought my first fight with WFF in Arizona, and then my last 3 were with FFC here in Las Vegas.
And what is your record?
Undefeated, all finishes.
That's what I thought.
4-0.
I'm very impressed by that, young man, because it's interesting. Some people just try to concentrate on just the MMA career or the jiu-jitsu career, and it seems like you're doing a little bit of a balance of both. Why is it important to you to compete in both?
So I think there's a big, like, especially for wrestlers, man, you've been around them, you know jiu-jitsu enough. Wrestlers are kind of hard-headed when it comes to jiu-jitsu. They think for MMA that, like, you only need wrestling. You just need to learn, like, submission escapes and shit. And I'm like, for whatever reason, it just clicked in my head, like, jiu-jitsu just made sense. And I think I see them as an extension of the other. I don't think you should be only good at one or the other. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of guys, when they fight, you see that, like, the jiu-jitsu guy gets dominated on top by the wrestler and loses the decision, or like the wrestler gets caught in a funky submission and they're not able to fight without avoiding certain positions, right? And I don't like the idea of having to avoid a lot of positions with people. And so I just saw that early on that I wanted to get good at jiu-jitsu, and then that's something that I can do for the rest of my life, not only just until I'm 30, 35 fighting MMA. I think there's a big skill gap in the jiu-jitsu at the highest level of MMA in a lot of ways. Like a lot of the good jiu-jitsu guys can't wrestle, and a lot of the good wrestlers can't do jiu-jitsu. And so I'm hoping to be one of the first guys that can implement both in a style that's not really really hasn't been seen before because of that.
I'll be perfectly honest. You know, I think, I don't know, it's one of my biggest life regrets, but it's definitely made life incredibly harder to try and do jiu-jitsu and learn a little bit of wrestling to go with it than it is to just like, I don't know. I mean, the reason why I do it is I just like being well versed and being able to converse in that language. So the thing I hate the most is when I have to give up every bit of my jiu-jitsu knowledge and just try to learn wrestling and really understand how much you suck at it so that you can try and make those improvements. But holy shit, do I hate those days where you're like, yeah. So I have an immense respect for a lot of our wrestling brethren. When did you start wrestling?
12.
12.
I started wrestling 12. Normally, that's pretty late for where I'm from. All my buddies that I started wrestling with started wrestling when they were 4, 5, 6. I just wasn't. Wrestling in Ohio is kind of like a family thing. Like your dad wrestled, your uncles wrestle, your brothers wrestle, and no one in my family wrestled. And I was like a violent, mean kid. So like I kind of, once I found it, I really took a liking to it, and that's what I did year round from the day I started until now.
How did you find your way into a class? Like, what made you go?
I was in the principal's office. I think I'd just gotten a fight or some kind of physical altercation with someone in the hallway, and I was in the principal's office. And the principal, I had already been in there like several times that year, and the year just started. And he was like, "We got to find you something that's gonna like keep you out of trouble." And he was actually the wrestling coach for the high school when I was in middle school. And he was like, "You got to go out for the wrestling team. We got to do something that's gonna like make you tired, keep you focused, like something that you might like." And then jumped in, and then that was pretty much it. I showed up to wrestling practice the next day and got my ass whooped, and I loved it.
That's good. You know, I always feel like if we ever did one of those Dangerous Minds movies, how the movie would be over if they just sent them to the wrestling room. Like, like those movies of like, I can't reach these kids. It's like, nah, just send them to the wrestling room. You know,
I do. This is like a long shot, long term. Like, if I got a lot of money, I'm going to do this. I want to open like a private school, and martial arts like boxing, jiu-jitsu, and wrestling will be mandatory. I think if some form of fighting was mandatory in public schools, that you wouldn't have the bullying. You would have guys that like are super arrogant and cocky. They get brought down, and the kids that are like not very outgoing or very shy, they get brought up, because that's just what like combat sports does. And it teaches you a lot about yourself and truly humbles. Like, people talk about being humble, but they don't even know what they're saying. Like, that's what truly humbles you, is like combat and combat sports. And then it's you obviously have to do it in a way that people are safe and everything like that, and you're learning. But I do think that with kids, if you learn some type of combat sport, it really helps with especially troubled youth, but I think it would help with everyone.
So let's talk about this. You were wrestling you throughout then from 12 on, so that meant high school. What were some of your favorite moments of wrestling in high school?
So when I was, I actually made a bet with my mom before my freshman year of high school that this was my goals at the time. My goals were set super low. I was like, if I ever make it to the state tournament in high school, if I ever qualify for state, you have to give me a tattoo. And then freshman year, I have a pretty good year, and then ended up like upsetting a bunch of guys at the district tournament and qualified for state as a freshman when there was me and one other kid on our team, so our team wasn't very good. We had 2 state qualifiers, which is terrible, and I was one of them. And then I was also at a school where we didn't have a lot of athletes anyway. Like all of our boys, like our football team sucked, basketball team sucked, wrestling team sucked, everything sucked. And so that was kind of a really big deal for me. And I think that's when I started opening up my eyes to what I could do. And then next moment would be sophomore year of high school. I'm at state. I remember I was cutting like literally 30 pounds every week to make 130. And I don't cut weight like that anymore. And I remember I qualified. I was losing my state placement match. I was losing by like 4 or 5, and I ended up cement mixering the kid and pinning him, dropping him on his head and pinning him. And then I had to go cut like 10 pounds to make weight. And I'm crying my eyes out to make weight, right? Like I'm actually bawling. Like I'm begging my coach. I'm like, can I withdraw? And like, you're not going to place at state if you don't make weight. And I was like, oh, whatever. And then I missed weight, and I had to come back in the morning. I had to cut weight all night and then make weight and then wrestle again. And then I wrestled again, ended up placing 7th at state my sophomore year. And then this isn't my favorite one, but this is a cool story to tell. Senior year of high school, I am ranked number 1 in the state. Was I was undefeated, ranked number 1 in the state. We have OCCs, which is like our conference in our high school, and then sectionals, districts, state is how you qualify. Sectionals, districts, and then you qualify for state. At OCCs, I'm in the finals. First 15 seconds of the match, I headlocked this kid, and I don't know what I did, but I fell on my hand, and this hand right here, this finger right here, my middle one, at like right in the middle of my hand, the finger dislocated and broke, like shattered.
Holy shit.
And it's literally popping out of my skin. And like I stand up, and I was like feeling dizzy, and I couldn't feel it. And I like look at my hand. I look at my hand, and it's like mangled. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with my hand, right? I walk over to my trainer. They call injury time. They tape it up. They put it back in. They tape it up. And I go out, and I start wrestling again, right? And it pops out again right away. And then I have to wrestle the rest of this match, right, with a broken hand. And this kid sees that it's broken. Like, you could, like, it was bad. He grabs the bone, starts pulling at it. Oh, God. And then, listen. And then, so, like, I'm on top of this kid. I'm winning the match. And he's laying on his, I don't know how much you've watched wrestling, but I start on top. Mm-hmm. I have a tight waist on him with my hand, and he grabs my hand with both of his hands and lays on the ground and just squeezes my hand, trying to hurt me more. And I stand up. He's belly down, and I'm pulling my hand, and he's just like laying there. And it caused a whole commotion between like there was like some of the rival schools were getting in fights with the other rival schools at the gym, going crazy over my match because this kid's just like, everyone sees my hands shattered, and then he's like trying to hurt it even more. And then there's just like a whole like ruckus about it, and it was like super funny. And then it's funny. Then that summer, I'll get back to it, but that summer, I messaged that kid to come train with me, and he avoided the hell out of me because I was gonna beat his ass even worse.
Well, yeah, no shit. I'm not trading with you after I pull some nonsense like that. Dude, at that point, I'm like, yo, I forgot how to wrestle. I don't know how to do jiu-jitsu anymore. What are you talking about, bro?
Yeah. And then, so then I broke my hand, right? And I go to the hospital. I have a boxer break in that hand, and then my hand, like the fingers are dislocated in the hand. It's not my fingers that are dislocated. In my hand, this part dislocated. So it's like super weird, super rare, like shouldn't ever happen. And go to the doctor, and they're like, yeah, we got to put pins in it. We got to do this. We got to do that. You're not going to be able to wrestle. And like my dream was to win a state title. At that time of my life, the only thing that mattered to me was winning a state title. And so when they told me I wasn't going to be able to wrestle, I was like, yeah, okay, well, whatever. I'll tape it up like so I can't move it, and I'll go wrestle, right? And so I actually had the doctor make me like a little cast that would help it from dislocating again. And then I just taped it up so it was like a fist, and I couldn't use it. And one time in a practice before districts, with the cast, with the tape, it dislocated again, and I had to take everything off, and the trainer had to like put it back in, and then it was crazy, right? And then so I'm not practicing for districts. I show up to districts. I'm pretty sure I pinned everyone at districts, or at least I didn't have a close match at districts, sectionals and districts. I go to state, ranked number 1 in the state. Everyone in the weight class I'd already wrestled, and I beat all of them. And end up losing in the state semifinals to a kid I already beat with my broken hand. I was literally wrestling with my hand behind my back, and ended up losing in the semifinals. And then that kid ended up going on to win state, and then I ended up for third. I had to wrestle 2 more matches after my heart was already broken.
Oh God!
Beat heart broken, hand broken. Beat 2 more guys. Ended up placing third. And I just remember the time like that was like I was like, I'm quitting wrestling. I'm done. I'm gonna do something else. I'm not going to college. I'm not doing all this other shit. And it took me about a week to get over that, but I just remember it's funny because at the time I thought my life was over, right? And looking back, it's like that wasn't anything. And then all the guys that did beat me when I was in high school, I either had a better career than them, or I ended up beating them when I was in college. So not always where you start, it's where you finish.
True. And I know this as a person who's competed in a number of things, and some of which on national levels. You know, your brain doesn't operate right when you're in competition mode, and it's not supposed to. If you're hopefully surrounded by good people, they should be the ones to set you in a good direction. So I think having good mentors and coaches is vital, because your main job in a competition should be kill, be best, do your thing. And so for me, I think the day after a savage loss, you know, I go up to the person and I say, let me know what you need. And then I say, I'm going to give you a day. Do what you need to do. Like, cry about it, be bitchy, do whatever you need, have your 1 day pity party. Don't involve me. But on Monday, let's reconvene. And at that point, if I still see you're in pity party mode, I'm not going to tolerate it. Because I don't think that's healthy to not learn how to manifest those losses into something better. Because then you become those stories of those people who are like, yeah, I kick the shit out of them every other day, but that 1 day it felt like the end of the world, and it was just another day, you know? And I get it. I totally understand, because I also don't like telling someone, oh, it didn't matter, because, like, it does matter, you know? And, you know, you always want to put forth your best foot. So I think it's really important to always be honest with your athletes and people who compete. But at the same point, don't let them get down on themselves so much that they can't move on.
Yeah, and that was the hard part because I didn't really have a lot of – I had, like, mentors outside of wrestling and outside of athletics that helped me with my personal life. But as far as, like, what to do with wrestling, what I was doing had never really been – like, the things I'm doing now have never been done with anyone that has ever come where I'm from. And they didn't see – like, when I told people I wanted to go wrestle Division I in college, they were like, why would you want to do that? Like, literally, that's what people were saying, and I'm just like, I just saw something else. I don't know where I got it from, because I didn't learn it from no one. So that was hard, because I was kind of a little bit on my own when it came to, like, the athletic side of it. But I had, like, emotional support and, like, family, my mom, and, like, my girlfriend's parents at the time, and, like, people like that, neighbors, stuff like that are helping me, like, emotionally and stuff. But as far as, like, athletic career wise, I didn't have anyone that was really gonna do that for me.
Understand that. I know that world very well. Let me ask this though: you go to Division I. Where do you wrestle for Division I, sir?
North Carolina State University.
All right. Tell me about that experience, because you went from Ohio to North Carolina, and that's got to be an adjustment in some ways. So, you know, like, what is that experience like? Like, what is that life like when you do that?
Yeah, so where I come from, right? Everyone, like, all my friends quit wrestling and stuff because, like, they wanted their girlfriends, or they wanted to smoke a lot of pot, or they wanted to drink a lot. They want to do all these other things. So like when I was 18, I didn't want anything to do with that shit, right? Like, and so NC State was recruiting us on the idea that we're gonna recruit guys that like don't want to party, they don't want to drink, they don't want to smoke, they just want to train, and that's how I was, right? And so I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go here because this is gonna be where people like I fit in. I get there, and I realize that a lot of the kids that share the mentality that I do are a little bit weenie. They're just like they're like mansion kids from New York or Florida or Georgia, and like they're very pampered, I guess.
Sure.
And like I wasn't, and for me, like when I'm looking for training partners, right, I want someone that's going to show up and push me. I don't care what you're doing outside of wrestling, to be completely honest. You could be doing coke and drinking all night, but if you show up at 6 a.m. to train with me and you're a good training partner, I don't care. But like I don't like the mentality of, and then a lot of the guys that, and I'm not like, I love everyone that I went to school with, but I'm not of the mentality of, oh, you work hard, you eat right, you sleep good, you don't party. Just because you don't do any of that shit doesn't mean you deserve the win, right? Like just because you do all the right things doesn't mean anything, because that's what, like, one, there's people that don't do the right things and they still win, and then there's other guys that do all the right things and they lose. So like that's not the determining factor. But I think when people are like, oh, I do all the right things, I deserve the win. No, you don't deserve the win shit. You deserve what you go and get. And I think once I got there, I kind of changed my mindset. And then it took me about a year when I was in college to change that. I had a losing record my freshman year, and then my sophomore year, I kind of switched my attitude. Right, I was like, I don't really care, like, because I was in bed by 9, not drinking, not partying. I was doing all the extra workouts. I wouldn't have a girlfriend. I was doing all this other shit, and then it's just like, bro, like that is limiting myself, because I'm not enjoying myself, and then 2, just because I do all those things doesn't mean you deserve the win. So I think the biggest takeaway I got away from college was like, it doesn't really matter if you had a good night's rest. It doesn't matter if you do all the right things. And so I ended up kind of not gelling with the team all that much because of that. Like I was there to wrestle, and I was there to like do good in wrestling and then train the fight afterwards. Like that was what I was there for. I wasn't there to get a 3.5 GPA and then give my degree to some dude that didn't go to college that owns $1 billion company.
Right. Well,
and work for him. Right?
Let's pause here for a second, because I know this part is important to kind of highlight, but you knew at this point you wanted to fight?
Yeah.
When did that happen? Was that while wrestling in Division I, or did that happen even when you were starting at 12 or even in high school?
So we had talked about it a little bit when I was in high school, but like I didn't have high expectations for myself at all. Like I thought I was going to end up laying brick for $80 an hour my whole life, because that's what I was trained to do when I was little. Didn't have super high expectations. So once I got to college and I started having a little bit of success, my buddy and coach at the time, Sean Spangler, who owns a school in Apex, North Carolina, which is in Raleigh pretty much, he is a black belt under Drysdale. And you might know, he's like known. I think Eddie Bravo came out and said he has like the best darts in grappling ever.
I'm familiar with the name.
Everyone knows him as the darts guy.
Yep.
Everyone knows him as the darts guy, right? And then so he moves back to North Carolina to open up his school because he wrestled at NC State. So he was an alumni after being in Vegas for 20 years training jiu-jitsu and competing and stuff like that. And then he came in and wrestled with us and then invited us to come do jiu-jitsu at his school when we weren't training wrestling and stuff, right? So I was the only one that really took him up on it. I started training with him. I got to talking with him. Sometimes I would meet up with him and we would watch the fights on the weekends. Like I was hanging out with this 45-year-old dude and his family on the weekends and not with my peers and stuff. It was just kind of funny. Me and him used to go, class would start at like 7:30. Class would be over at 9:30, but we would stay and roll until like midnight, like dead ass. Like we would just go at it. And he was like a really good mentor. He's probably the number one reason I'm where I'm at right now. When I was like not doing well in school or something wasn't going bad when I was in college, man, that was the guy I went to. And he would always talk some sense into me or calm me down or like help me if I needed something or if I just needed to work out, because like my stress relief is training. And so like if I needed to train, like I'm like, hey Sean, can we go train, because I'm not feeling good about something right now. We would go train, and then he's the one that kind of got me connected with everyone out here in Vegas. So like all the connections that he made in his 20 years here, I moved here with all those connections basically. Mm-hmm. So I'm super grateful for him and everything that he's done.
So when did that transition to Vegas happen?
I was done wrestling in college in 2016. And then I spent like 6 months training at Sean's, one of Sean's schools that he's affiliated with in Wilmington. And then after about almost a year training there, I was doing jiu-jitsu only pretty much. I was like boxing a little bit, but like jiu-jitsu in the gi, that's it. Like no gi, like once a week, 2-3 times a day. And then I came out here for American Nationals and I visited, and then I actually met Robert Follis. And then Robert, I was talking to like some other MMA people that I know. We'll mention their names, but I was talking to some other places that I could possibly move and go train. And then after I talked to Follis, he kind of talked me into moving to Vegas, and then I talked to Sean Spangler about it. And then after me and Sean talked about it, I decided that was what's best for me. Once I got back from American Nationals, my stuff was packed up in my car, and I moved out here right away.
Interesting. I was wondering,
2017.
And I'm curious on this too, because I'm wondering, you know, mostly everybody gets really, really set when they're wrestling and just doing wrestling. They don't necessarily touch jiu-jitsu yet. So was that your first experience in getting to jiu-jitsu, was while you were out in North Carolina?
Yeah, when I was 18, and then Sean came in and invited us to come do jiu-jitsu at his school. I didn't have a lot of time because I was in school and wrestling and stuff. Mm-hmm. But like once a week, I was doing jiu-jitsu, and then in the summers, I was boxing and doing jiu-jitsu and wrestling every single day because I didn't have to go to school. So I was literally, when we were out of school, for whether it was break or in the summer, I was getting up, jiu-jitsu in the morning, weights, wrestling, and then going and boxing at night. And I was doing that. I did that for every summer while I was in college.
When did you know, and this is a question I love to know, when did you know that you fell in love with jiu-jitsu, though?
I fucking hated it at first, bro.
Well, I mean, obviously, wrestler, so yeah, we get that part. But when did you know? Because here's the thing. A competitive anything, for most people, is what draws them in. And so I've seen people go from being wrestlers that were like, oh, I suck at this. This little dude beat me up, to, no, dude, I'm so competitive, I needed to learn this shit to be that person. I've seen it happen to a multitude of areas. But if you're also doing boxing and you're going to eventually kind of make this transition into MMA, you know it's a necessary beast. So if you hate it, how did you fall in love with it? All right, let's rephrase the question. Have you ever fallen in love with jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, no, I have. I want to, like, it's, so my Jonathan Uzgadagi and Sean Spangler, who were my two coaches when I was in North Carolina for jiu-jitsu, they used to hold me down in side control, bro, in the gi we would go 60 minutes. We would just do 60-minute goes just for shits and giggles, right? And they would hold me. It would take them like 5 minutes to get me in side control. I would like do a scramble wrong, and they would catch me and put me in side control. They would hold me there the whole time. Shoulder pressure, gi, block the hip. I can't shrimp. I can't do shit. And that was when I realized I needed to get better at it. And then when I first started loving it was probably after American Nationals. After American Nationals, I placed second in gi and no gi when I visited Vegas, and I was able to do well but I still was just kind of like a wrestler, right? Like I was doing well with more of just wrestling. And I think it was funny because at American Nationals this past year, people haven't seen me. Some people at Drysdale have never seen me compete, right? And then I go out and I'm pulling half guard in every single one of my matches, and I'm pulling guard in the gi, and they're like, "What is Max doing?" And I'm like, "It's just this is what I like to do now. Like I can't. What do you want me to do?" And especially in jiu-jitsu matches, wrestling isn't necessarily like, sometimes wrestling with someone is going to be the harder thing to do.
Yeah.
Especially with jiu-jitsu guys that aren't good on top. I want to pull guard on them because they suck on top.
Well,
right?
also, I mean, why waste all that time? You know, if there's a strategy to get to the position where you feel comfortable and you have an advantage to getting there, why not just be there? As opposed to some really shitty stand-up wrestling for a while where they might get some sort of dumb advantage or something as a result of it that's not something that's calculated, where you go, that's not the way I want to lose.
Yeah, so I think it was first American Nationals, but I really think because now after the Shugyo tournament, actually, after actually seeing Jordan Holy compete, the way he was attacking the leg locks and stuff, I got back and like I've trained leg locks enough, and I've trained with like some really, really good guys, and I am good at passing, and I'm very, very good at staying out of leg locks. Like no one's ever put me in a leg lock position if I don't want to be there, right? Like I would put myself there to train them, but if I'm passing positions, and then after seeing Holy compete, and then just seeing the whole, and then just being around it more, the last like year I've been doing a lot of leg lock stuff, and I'm getting pretty good at it. And now I think recently it's been like, now I'm like very, I think when people see me fight, it might not be this fight, it might not be the next one, might not be the next one after that. Eventually someone's going to see me, the wrestler with heavy hands, do some really, really jitsy shit. And they're going to be like, what the fuck? And so I think it's most recent. I think it's recent. I don't know exactly when I've really fallen in love with everything about jiu-jitsu, not just training jiu-jitsu, but like every single position, every single aspect, competing, the rules. It might have been the point might have been the Shugyo tournament, to be honest.
I want to talk about that because I was so excited that you did that. And I want to give you credit. It's not to say that other people weren't good at this, but I think your talking heads might have been some of my favorite. Mostly because I felt like if the cameras weren't on and I had asked you a question myself, I'm pretty sure that would have been the exact answer I would have gotten. And as a TV guy, that's what you're hoping for. So when I saw you come back after one and be like, well, that wasn't great. And I was like, that's perfect. You know, like, because you know that there's a cut, there's an edit. You go out there, you go do the competition. But it seemed like it had happened where you're like, whoop, 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 whoop. Nah, not great. Okay.
Well, you know, it was funny after, because they didn't know anything about me, right? Because I didn't compete in jiu-jitsu that much. But then Phil messaged Drysdale and said, hey, do you got any guys? And Drysdale was like, yeah, I got this guy. You're not going to believe me, but I got this guy. And so he was a little hesitant about putting me on, and then someone pulled out, and I was able to get in on relatively good notice. And then as soon as I show up, they start asking me questions. I'm talking to them. They're getting to know me. It took them after weigh-ins, and they really got to see my personality. They had a camera on me the entire time. Not to say they didn't. They weren't playing favorites, but I'm pretty funny, and I like to fuck around a lot. So it was just I wish I had my hands on all the film that they got, because I was on fire all weekend when it comes to my mouth.
I mean, the weird part is that for me, seeing a tournament like that, knowing that it existed, I was one of the first people to reach out to Rich and just say, like, I want you to talk about this because I know you're trying to do this secret build out sort of shit, but I want people to know about it, and I want to help where I can to get the word out on it. And I think obviously it'll catch on, but I'm a huge fan of people who try to do new shit, and I love submission only. Like, I have friends, and it's mostly because I think I'm a pain in the ass when I roll with people, where people sometimes have a hard time finishing me, and I'm like, I'm not good. I just kind of can figure out what you're doing and kind of like diffuse the bomb, you know? But if we were playing by points, I'd probably be losing by 100. So, like, you know, it's not like I'm sitting here being like, yes. So I tell people, I'm like, I have no problem going after bells and going and because I like finality to it. And I think there's a craft to getting points and being consistent in that and being able to control. But to me, I've always loved the purity of, all right, you guys figure it out. If you're going to tape it, that's cool. That's a good way of making submission only, no time limit work. So obviously they were able to contact you, and that worked. What's that?
It's the only way, I think. I don't see another way.
I mean,
as far as making it viewable for no one that knows jiu-jitsu.
Let's put it this way.
I know jiu-jitsu. I love jiu-jitsu. I like watching it. I ain't going to a submission only event to watch.
I have commentated famously some sub only, no time limit events. And the thing that I know is I always say that comedy should come secondary in events like that. So I don't try to go out there and just do jokes. You know, you try to be honest and make it in the service of the event. But when a match has been going on for 20 minutes, you are starting to do some shtick. You know, you are starting to kind of come in and be like, hey guys, apparently this note just came to me. There is a sale on CBD right now going on. I also made a Cosmo quiz. What kind of CBD are you? Go to the link below to figure it out. Like, you're doing what you can to make use of the fact that it's like, oh fuck, these guys are getting kind of boring right now. So you do the best that you can. But I appreciated that. Tell me, what was the standout moment for you in being a part of that?
Probably just people realizing I got a really good DARS. That in general. I
mean, it was pretty spectacular. Was it, though, that you also got a chance? I think one of the biggest misnomers for jiu-jitsu is you assume just because somebody has a medal or a trophy that you should automatically assume they'll always make great matches. And so I think the thing that made this happen and work in your favor was it was just what happened in the matches and a personality to match it. So for you, did it feel good to just be able to say, like, I'm just going to be myself and I'm going to be competitive and I'm going to have fun?
Yeah, no, they made it super easy to, like, not really be stressed about the matches because, like, it was, like, a super chill, laid back, and, like, they were letting me, like, they were fucking around with me just as much as I was fucking around with them. Like, I can't do that at IBJJF. I try to mess with the referee and they'll, like, shut up.
Yeah.
Right? And they talk to us. They're like, this is a show. And when it comes to putting on a show, it's just like that. It's just very natural to me. Like, I feel like I was able to do that really well, but I wasn't necessarily like, and because I'd done sub only, but it was like years ago when I was a white belt against at a small place in North Carolina. I had like a bunch of like 60-minute matches because they couldn't sub me because I was just wrestling them the whole time. The day, if I can compete with these guys and what they do and what they train to do, if I were to compete against them in an MMA match, it wouldn't be close.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So then, like, and that's what, it's really just practice for me. And because I had that mindset where it was practice, I'm going to go and I'm going to try to finish as fast as I can and I'm going to be aggressive and do all that stuff, I was able to learn from it a lot more, and I was able to see where I'm really good at and I was able to see where I'm not as good at. And it was just fun in general because it was just like a practice day for me. It wasn't like, oh, I got to win this because this is what's going to get me seminars or whatever. Like, that would have been nice, obviously, but, and that's what I was trying to do. But at the end of the day, what's it matter to me? It doesn't, it matters, but it's not like It wasn't like not winning a state title, or it wasn't like I'm in the UFC and I lose a fight, right?
Mhm.
It was just something I was kind of doing for fun.
Let me ask this. You guys film that at a certain point. It's about 6 months out or so before it airs, or even longer than that. I'm sorry. But so there's this anticipation of like, how are people going to respond? Like, you know in your head how it all goes. And you have to hold this on the inside. But when it comes out, we get it week by week. What was it like watching
Yeah.
people's reactions that delayed and then that regimented week to week?
I couldn't wait for the episodes to come out. Like, it was like very similar feeling to when like The Mandalorian was only releasing shit every Friday. I'm just like, I want to see Baby Yoda again now, you know? So that's what kind of, but then like, it also like, I knew what was going to happen, so it wasn't quite that exciting, but I did want to see like what they were going to use as far as what I know they got of me doing just outside of jiu-jitsu, because a lot of it was funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I really just wanted to see that, to be honest. Like, I wanted to see, there's a couple stories there that I don't know if I'm allowed to tell, but it's pretty funny. And, so I hope at some point they release like some more stuff, or like talk about the season, or they do like a documentary about all the seasons after there's like 5 of them or something like that. Cause there was some really funny shit that was going on behind the scenes that, there's just too much going on. You can't tell everything, and you want it to be a very like plot oriented story. You don't want to just like throw in random bullshit. But they got a lot of funny stuff, man, and so I was like excited to see what they were gonna put out there.
I'm sure in the future I'll talk to Phil about the possibility of doing like seasons where old competitors, former competitors, come back.
Like, yeah.
Well, not just that. I mean, the documentary stuff is always great, but I always feel like, you know what happens after The Ultimate Fighter? Those people come back as coaches. So then all of a sudden it's like, your team versus somebody else's team. And at the end, there's like a giant event that we all wait for to see. Because, I mean, the weird part about it is you look at all those Ultimate Fighter folks, a lot of those people are now considered legends in the sport of MMA. Yeah. So there is a means to doing that. Well, that's pretty dope, dude. I'm pretty glad that happened for you. And like I said, I knew when I was watching your talking heads, considering all of the crazy that was going on, I kept being like, oh, that's pretty funny, or that's pretty dope. He's interesting. So I was like, yeah, I know we're probably going to interview at some point, just based off of those things at that point. And I remember just tracking you and seeing like, man, your last fight, seeing how that went for you, and continuously seeing how, it was like you already had your next things kind of lined up. So yeah, tell me a little bit about what's going down this Friday.
February 28th on UFC Fight Pass. I'm the co-main event. I'm fighting Paulo Silva from American Top Team, I think. Don't know anything about him, to be completely honest. Haven't watched any film. No, nothing. And yeah, I'm excited. This is the next step. Super. Hopefully 1-2 more, and I can get a contract with the UFC, and then really show everyone what I'm about.
It's pretty dope. You've got a pretty good attitude on you, kid, and I appreciate the fact that you're trying to make it entertaining for those of us. A 4-0 start is a very, very good start to an MMA career, and I'm very excited about that. But I guess I wanted to transition into a couple things before we start to wind down here. The first of which was this. You put up a status update, and it caught my ire, and it was one of those things where you were asking who was on your Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling, and I could think when you put that up, I was like, yo, bro, like wrestling. I don't think you know this other world that well. I don't know how well and versed you are to speak as an authority figure on that.
I'm just a fan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, used to be a fan. I don't watch it as much anymore, but when I was little, my one of my mom's boyfriends had he had like cassette tapes from like 93 until 2000. And so in like 2001, I had watched, like I was like binge watching those, like they were on Netflix, right? So like I think that the Attitude Era was the greatest era ever. And then I started watching it weekly from like 2001 until probably 2010 with like Eddie Guerrero, Edge, Chavo, Rey Mysterio, Batista, John Cena, when those guys were all like the biggest guys.
Mm-hmm.
But Mount Rushmore of wrestling and like your top 4 aren't necessarily the same thing. And I do think, looking back, I probably just named my top 4 favorite and not like Mount Rushmore, because Mount Rushmore is a little bit different.
It's fair.
Like you can name your top 4 presidents, but you can't, like, those aren't the same as the Rushmore, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm thinking about it, I just named my top 4 favorite ever.
Okay.
But that still makes it. But I'm still saying it's my Rush.
It's just funny to me because you immediately, once I put it up, and I was like, it's okay. And you looked at me and you go, what's yours? And I was like, kid, we're going to interview at some point. Like, I don't need to tell you right now because I know at some point you and I are going to chat about this, and I'm going to have to educate you as a person. But I appreciate you kind of looking back on that with this. The one thing I always do ask wrestlers, because I always feel like when you're a wrestler, you kind of look at that world and you're like, that's not wrestling, you know? But did you ever try to replicate any of those moves in the wrestling room?
In sparring, I have hit a Boston Crab against like a good dude. I caught a leg kick, and then I tripped him, and I kept the leg, and I just stepped over the leg.
It's
fucking Boston Crab.
I will tell you this: a lot of the guys that I roll with, it's not like they're ever deathly afraid that I'm going to armbar them or some bullshit. But when it gets down to it, they're like, fuck, Raph might yes lock me. Like, this would be very bad if he ended up getting a pro wrestling move. And, like, all of them without fail are like, fuck, please don't Boston Crab me. Please don't sharpshoot me. And I'm like, hey, listen, I only pick on people who know pro wrestling. I don't pick on civilians. And I pick on people who will talk some trash usually. And, so those are my gifts. But that's a pretty good move to hit. It's not bad.
Yeah, I do think I don't obviously the moves, but I think that pro wrestling does something very, very right to have millions, if not like millions, like hundreds of millions people watch, and it's fake. They're doing something, and it's not like 100% fake, right? Like people are getting injured, like severely injured.
The real term they say is like predetermined.
Yeah, predetermined. And the fact that they can get like their marketing and the way they talk and the way they do things is so successful business wise, I do try to take a lot from that, and I'm still trying to learn from that. And I just, as far as like the entertainment business, you can't do much better than what they do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always astounded when I see, somebody like Colby Covington start to recite lines that I go, I know that line. I was like, I know exactly who that comes from.
He recites them instead of making it his own, though, which is kind of dumb. Chael made them his own.
Kind of. Chael's regurgitation of Razor Ramon lines to the pristine ear was a little bit more of like, oh, okay. But it didn't mean I didn't not enjoy it. When Chael did it, it felt like something fresh and new, and I think
he's bringing it to a new audience that has never heard it before.
Yep.
In general, like some people have heard it before, but a lot of people have never heard it.
Absolutely.
My favorite is when he challenged Anderson Silva, and like in the they'll be like, okay, like if you beat me, I'll leave the WWE forever, and vice versa. He did that with Chael. He's like, if you beat me, I'll quit forever, and if I beat you, you have to leave the division.
Yeah.
Like that's cool to me.
Yeah.
Like those kind of stipulations that aren't contractual and it's just a shit talking. It's cool.
Yeah. So I mean, that's why it's kind of goofy to me, and I don't mind having a moment where I see some of these guys do it, but when you come from a sports entertainment appreciation, see some of the jiu-jitsu guys do it, you're like, it's not bad,
You're stupid if you don't do that, bro. That's where the money's at. Like, you don't want to fight. You don't want to do this shit. And I was like, but I do.
I mean, it makes you more appealing. But, I will make it a requirement that before you do any promo work, that you and I have to have a couple chats, because I'm going to have to pull a couple things out of the personality here. It's okay.
That's fine.
You do pretty okay on the Twitter thing where I'm like, yeah, it's not bad, okay. But I'm like, you still got this aw shucks kidness that we got to break real quick. So I'll definitely, I'm like, yeah, to tell people is I'm like, you know what, hey man, it sounds like you're doing incredibly good things. I'm close enough in proximity to Las Vegas where I know many of the people that you train with and out that way. And I got to tell you, man, I have a high appreciation for the competitors that I've seen of that place. So there we go. All right, Max, let's do this. If people want to go see you, how do they go see you and your fight? If they are local and if they are not local.
On co-main, I'll be main event, and about 9 o'clock Eastern, East Coast time.
It's been, I'm trying to think. I think the last time was almost 2 years ago, and I'm always like, there's usually a period. The longest time I go to Vegas, it's like 2 months, and I think it's the last time I was out there.
We got probably one of the best rooms Drysdale's ever had right now between like me and some coming guys. We have Felipe Andrew, who's ranked #1 in the world right now in the GI IBJJF rankings. We got a really, really good, solid group. And then we got guys that don't even compete that give me and Felipe a run for our money. Like, we got good dudes. So
those are the people that I know, because those are the people that I was like, where'd you come from? I remembered when I was in that room.
Yeah.
I always tell this story to everybody from Drysdale, but I think it really does show the example of it. Drysdale saw me, and one of his kids was just wailing and like continuously putting me in duress, you know? And Drysdale's like yelling at me, and he's just like, Raph, we got to get out of there. And I was like, your kid did this. You did this. This is your fault. Don't tell me to just figure it out. You essentially taught them how to murder me. This is not my fucking fault. So every time, like, I went up to him afterwards, and he was just like, no, he's like, it was pretty funny. He goes, that's our room. And I was like, thanks, dude. Really appreciate the cheerleading to my death. But I had a wonderful time when I was out there last. So I'm sure I'll find another time to get out there. Well, Max, this has been a wonderful pleasure. Again, huge appreciation for you making the time to make it work here today. We will catch up again very soon, sir.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Not a problem. And you guys, real quick, I just want to remind you, if you have not subscribed to us, go do that right now. The Grappling Hour is very simple to find. It's just at Grappling Hour on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. I know I don't play video games a ton, but follow me on there too, you dorks. Periscope and Twitter, all at Grappling Hour. And we've made a commitment this year to getting 2,500 subscribers. I need you guys to be one of those on our YouTube channel. Let's make that dream happen. It's been a great day for grappling, guys. And I cannot say this enough, but we always appreciate you watching us. And tomorrow there will be the exclusive Facebook premiere of my going to grab beers with our good friend Milton Arguello. And you guys will see that, and I think you will very much enjoy it. It was a very fun one to do if you haven't had the chance to check it out. He fights also this Friday out in California, out in Long Beach. And if you are so interested and you're not watching these gentlemen, or maybe after they're done, you can catch me doing live commentary for an event called Submissions on the Shore. It'll be a blast. That's going to do it for us here at the show. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Great day for grappling. We'll see you on the mats.